You are listening to Bootstrap Farmer Radio.
Hey everybody, it's Nick from Bootstrap Farmer, and today we are at Nelson Carter's farm, Cartamere farm, just outside of Celina, Texas. I'm going to have him kind of give his origin story, and then we're going to get into what you're currently in production doing, and we've actually got a lot to talk about. So how did all of this start?
Sure. So I actually spent 15 years in telecommunications. And as part of that, I ended up working my way up, got put in the management program, and I sent my family and I overseas. And had a few choices of places that we were going to go, and we ended up going to outside of Milan. It was a great experience for us, but we went over there as typical Americans. I mean, you throw something in a microwave and, go through fast food or whatever. And we wind up in northern Italy, and there's hardly any fast food. There's the frozen food aisle is about 10 feet long, and it's all like really good stuff. And we had to learn how to cook. And what was like a real challenge at first ended up becoming something that we just fell in love with. So my wife and I really got into cooking and understanding the quality of the ingredients that you put in your food. And it just became kind of a passion for us. So when we came back, we were thrown back into, the American approach to food. And at the same time, I was getting a little disenchanted with the corporate world. And through a series of relationships, I met a large restaurateur in Dallas that was looking for some local produce. And we just kind of jumped into it. So started a 3/4 acre garden to begin with. And then outside of that, we started messing around with some honeybees, eggs, eventually worked our way into meat, poultry, and in the last 5 years, we've been full-time farming.
Did you stay at the communications job before, or did you just totally get out and then start?
So, I did stay with my telecom job for about 6 months until we kind of worked out some, in essence, what would have been some preliminary contracts with some restaurants. So there was about 6 restaurants that had committed to buying from us. And we probably had an unrealistic production that first year. I mean, everything just worked. Everything we put in the ground grew. It was easy. Since then, we've had some challenges, but we've learned how to work through those challenges.
I think it's important to point out that this was not your first go at any type of agricultural venture. You grew up on a farm.
Yeah, so grew up on a farm. Almost everything we do today, I did as a boy. I mean, we had chickens, we had layers, processed chickens when I was when we'd have old layers or roosters that my dad was tired of, chasing my sister. We'd process those. We had sheep. Some of my earliest memories were being in the garden with my grandmother. So we did all of these sorts of things, but not at a commercial level. So taking those things, those passions, and some of those experiences and commercializing them has been a challenge. It's one thing to have, 20 chickens in the backyard. It's another thing to have 4,000 chickens and do it profitably.
What was the hardest barrier to overcome as you made that leap?
So it's interesting. I mean, we're in a time for sustainable farming that's I feel like the ability to sell the product is fairly, I don't want to say easy, but with a little effort, we can move product. There's a lot of people that want what we're producing. Probably some of the biggest challenges were, first of all, production. And when I say production, I mean consistent production. So as I mentioned, we've had really good years for vegetables, and we've had years that have been very challenging. We've had just on provisioning of our poultry. So there'll be times where I'll have 400 pounds of chicken legs and no chicken breasts. So trying to make sure that we are managing those inventories in a way that's consistent and that our chefs can work with that. So the production side's been a challenge. We're getting better and better every year. And then I would say the other challenge was price benchmarking. I mean, as a farm, you produce a product, whether it be a turnip or a chicken, knowing what's a fair price to charge for that product. It's actually more difficult than I thought.
And so a lot of people, I hear that over and over again, fair price. We all talk about what that means. Is that fair to the farmer? Is it fair to the consumer? Is it fair to the consumer to have a fair price and then that farmer go out of business the next year because they can't stay afloat, kind of thing? So that fair price, even at a premium level, straight to retail at some degree, there's a lot of finagling to do and a lot to figure out, and figuring out where that threshold's going to be.
There is. I tell people this story. I have, we've a lot of our chefs have become our friends, so that we can speak very candidly with them. I've had one particular chef in a 2-week period handed me an invoice back and said, I'm not going to pay this unless you double it, because if you charge me this, you'll be out of business. And a week later, for a different product, he handed it back to me and said, "You've lost your mind if you think I'm going to pay this much for this product." And it wasn't that anyone was trying to take advantage of anyone. It was just trying to understand what a fair value is. So we spent a lot of time. We know how to calculate food cost per plate. So we look at our products through the eyes of a chef. If I'm going to charge a certain amount for leg quarters on chicken, I want to know what that equates to in terms of a menu price. And it helps me understand, how that product is going to be uplifted through the restaurant, and if my price is really a fair price.
You said during the tour when we were walking around that you built this farm to be a chef's farm, not necessarily for retail. So I think taking those extra steps and knowing what they're having to deal with, a lot of these places that you and I know here in Dallas, they're chef ownered, and then there's a lot of people that just have they're a chef at a place that's owned by somebody else, and they're in meetings all day long, and they're at events all day long, and they have to balance not only the cooking side but the business side, because they're accountable not only to their own restaurant, but sometimes they're accountable to a team of owners or an investment group or something like that. So I think going in there, speaking their language, they understand that you've done your homework. You know how much, like you said, the per plate is going to cost. I can't imagine that doesn't give you a leg up.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the other thing that we've discovered is, they're selling a product as well. Not only are they selling a great dish, but they're selling a story. And to the degree that we can help them build that story with our products, because there's a lot of commodity purveyors out there. I mean, we talked about it earlier. There's guys all over this country with 75,000, chicken houses that are producing just commodity chicken.
And pun totally intended, but that's a whole different animal.
That is a totally different animal, yeah. But so, certainly we're providing a much better quality product, and the chefs appreciate that. But the fact that they come out here, they know us, their staff's been out here, all of these things give them a story that's meaningful to their customers. Their customers want to support a restaurant that buys local and supports farmers that are, doing their best to provide the best product they can for them. And that whole supply chain, if there's a good story and it's transparent and open and honest, everyone wins. We started selling to restaurants at the very beginning, but with some of the standard pitfalls, so availability was ebbed and flowed way too much. That's something we still struggle with, but and the number of restaurants. Now that the Profound group has come together, I think we're almost 40 restaurants that we're dealing with now. And I think, the list before we even came together, I had 75 chefs on my list. Sometimes multiple ones at a single restaurant, like Executive and Sue's. But so we've been able to expand our customer base, which is a huge help for us. We have some customers that want chicken breast, others that will take leg quarters, some that will take the hearts and livers. We don't waste anything. So just being able to broaden that customer base helps us move product better, which makes us more financially viable.
And are you able to, because of the relationships you have with the chefs, hey, we're overloaded on thighs right now, we're overloaded on legs right now, is there any seasonal thing you can do?
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is where everyone wins. So if we've got, if we have the relationship with the chef that we say, hey, we can provide you 300 pounds of thighs over the next 3 weeks. Can y'all do a special? And by the way, we're going to make it worth your time. We need to move that product. And, going back to that per plate cost and the profitability of that special, we can help you out if you help us out. Help us move that inventory. We're going to give you a more profitable plate for the next 3 weeks.
And I think it's important to point out now that you are a diversified farm. I mean, how many different lines are you moving through here right now between the vegetables and everything you have?
Yeah, so we do two varieties of meat bird. We do layers, so we have an egg operation, the seasonal vegetables, um, and then we do lamb as well. Lamb seasonal for us because the breed that we raise. But we also try to look for synergies. I mean, when we started kind of consolidating and saying, hey, where can we make a decent living? And we can't do everything. You know, we can do a lot of things poorly or a few things well. We also tried to find the synergy. So it made sense to me, if we're going to do meat poultry, we should do eggs as well. I mean, if you know, they aren't the same animal, even though they're both chickens. You have to manage them differently. But in terms of our feed shipments and some of our packaging and just the way that we get feed to the field, we use the exact same field house. We just configure them differently. And that even gives us flexibility. I was mentioning earlier, we have two field houses for laying hens. And right now our laying population is a little bit under where I want. I've got more demand on meat, so we quickly were able to convert a house over for meat production while we're brooding up the next generation of layers. So having all those synergies makes sense for us.
And a generation is about 8 weeks.
On the meat birds, yeah. Yep, 2 years on the layers.
So what does the vegetable operation look like?
Vegetables have been a struggle for us. There's not only from a production standpoint, I mean, from an organic perspective, you know, fighting weeds, fighting insects, just having control factors in terms of, you know, the environment. We've got some great friends that own hydroponic operations, and I remember having a discussion like with Jeff Bednar about time to plant something, and he just laughed at me. He's like, man, I don't even know what seasons are. You know, I've got the same season in my greenhouse all the time. It's not the same when it's in ground. You know, we struggle with too much rain. Not enough rain is not a problem because we can always irrigate. But if, you know, if fields flood, if we get a hard freeze, we got down to 6 degrees one night last winter. That's tough. We had some hot weather this year. I mean, we got up to 113 here at the farm. So nothing. I mean, not only did tomatoes not pollinate, they hardly survive at that temperature. So so vegetables. The other thing that we're still working through is understanding the profitability of vegetables. I mean, we know down to the penny what we make on eggs. We have a really good visibility on poultry and lamb because we know what our inputs are. But when you've got half an acre of diversified vegetables and you're trying to understand what's the cost of the seedling or the seed and the labor inputs, to know that, hey, I've got a 31% margin on a head of cabbage, we're just not there yet. So we kind of look at those things in terms of row feet. I know how much gross I need to make on row feet to make it worth our time. And so we're a little bit more financially general on vegetables, and I'm not comfortable with that. So hopefully we'll learn more as we go.
Do you feel it behooves you to have that diversity when you go into the chefs? So not only can you buy the eggs and the poultry and the lamb, but we also have greens or turnips or something like that. Is it easier for them, or do they have that handled? How's that been with those kinds of transitions?
So it's definitely the case on retail. People want a grocery store to shop at. So if and again, so about 85% of everything we do goes commercial, goes to either small independent grocers or restaurants. And the other, 10 or 15% is retail customers.
And they're coming out to the farm.
They're coming out to the farm, but we also have a distributed model where we have pickup locations. So we manage an online grocery store. They purchase, we harvest, and we send it out to those locations once a week. The rest of the time we're dealing with our commercial customers.
All right, so explain to everybody how the retail straight to direct to consumer works.
Sure. So we manage our own online grocery store. So it's just a web store. Customers can go online, purchase whatever they want. We update those inventories on a weekly basis, sometimes multiple times a week. And it's also, we found a good way to manage our inventories. So the way we've always approached our products is we sell everything we can to the chefs, and whatever we have remaining, we make available to our retail customers. But some of those things we inherently sell out of. Eggs is a great example.
But you can put those availabilities up, and they know once they've bought that, then it's once somebody's bought it, it comes out of inventory and
Yep,
it's not available.
Secure that purchase for them. So if we think we're going to have a case of eggs left, we'll put 15 dozen up there, and as those are bought down, we don't oversell. And one of the things you'd asked is, does variety matter? I think for retail customers, it does. They want to be able to have a grocery store to shop from. So we've noticed that the more products we have on our retail side, the better our overall sales are. We've also noticed that we have things that we call pull-through products. So customers will go out of their way to buy eggs, honey, tomatoes, things of that nature. And when they do it, they may also buy a bunch of radish or a bunch of kale, something like that, where they may not go out of their way to buy radishes. So some of those core products are key in pulling through other sales.
Just like at a grocery store, you'd have your milk, eggs, butter, cheese,
your standards.
Kind of
Yep, absolutely. I think on the commercial side, I think we're actually finding the opposite. I think our customers are more interested in farms that do something and do something really well. So they don't have a problem working with a small, goat dairy that does just an exceptional artisan cheese. They don't have to have 100 products to be on their radar. So, and as we start to team with other farms, we want to understand what we can do well and what other farms that are our partners do better than us. So the hydroponic guys are a great example. I mean, now in the Profounds group, I think there's something like a capacity of 7,000 heads of lettuce a week. So it just doesn't make sense for us to do an in-ground lettuce when they can do this beautiful head of lettuce. It's consistent. The chefs love it. But on the other hand, they can't really do turnips or squash or zucchini. And that's something we're good at. So, we're probably going to consolidate more and more, find the areas that we can make a difference and focus on those.
All right, so this is a good time to bring up the fact that you're the Nelson that we talked about the other day as part of the Profound Foods group. And we talked a lot about removing barriers for chefs to be able to buy from small farms. And I think you really nailed home a point a minute ago where you said chefs don't mind buying from somebody that specializes in something. The other thing that they can, now that's more farms that they can say they support, instead of, well, I'm just using Cartamere because I can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 things. Mm-hmm. Now you're using Profound Food Groups, which is pushing all these farmers, so they can still say they're using all these other farmers and have that barrier removed because of how Profound was set up. So we heard Jeff's take on it the other day, but whenever you guys first started delivering for each other and this thing first started going on, I mean, what was your view on it?
So yeah, I mean, I won't totally repeat the story, but it started off as just a couple of friends helping each other out. We realized we were going to the same restaurants. We're both going to Dallas a couple times a week, and it just it didn't make sense for us to be burning all that time, fuel, and energy. So he took Tuesdays, I took Thursdays, and we just delivered for each other, and then it's become much more formalized as we move forward. But yeah, I think it helps both sides of the equation. Not only does it help the chefs out, so they've got they're going to have a single ordering portal. That's huge. I mean, our design is to get up to 50 different farms,
and it's also what they're used to. I mean,
it is what they're used to, but not with truly local direct purchases from farms. Yeah. So they're getting these big purveyors, these consolidators. So to be able to have that same ease of ordering, single invoice, single delivery, all of that. From truly local, transparent farms, that's very innovative. I think it helps the farm as well. Most of the farmers I know got into this because they love farming. And there's a few guys like Jeff that are just inherent marketers. He's really good at that. But a lot of guys, they just want to do what they love. They want to farm. They want to be out at their place, managing the animals or the vegetables. So to be able to come alongside them, not only be a salesperson for them, manage some of their invoicing and AR, but also get it to market. That's a huge benefit for farmers. Even Cartamere, I mean, we like to market. We like to deal with chefs. We appreciate all that. But the ability to hone our skills and our quality of our product on the farm, we're really looking forward to having that ecosystem grow for us so that we can be better at what we do, more profitable and more quality. One of the big factors that Jeff and I wanted to instill in the group, though, was that these farms didn't lose their identities. So how do you create this kind of this consolidated distribution model without the farms just becoming, hidden behind the face of Profound Foods? So we talk a lot about how to make sure that those farmers still get in front of the chefs, that they can still tell that story, and that story can get conveyed through that restaurant to their customers. Because again, that's one of the things that the chefs don't want to lose either.
I think the numerous events that you guys are planning to not only have the chefs come out to different farm locations, but to also include the public, is something that they're not used to, because we all know about the distributors that come. They have everything from oil to the birds, to the vegetables, to paper goods.
Mm-hmm.
But for you guys to come in as the local chefs or as the local farmers and still have that, hey, come out to the farm, come do a work day, let's all work together. We'll come out to the restaurant. There's a lot of that going on, and I think that plays up huge to this whole two-way street role.
Sure. And relationships are important for us. I mean, there's a lot of these big purveyors, they may be very good at getting products to market, at offering a variety of products, but they I think we will have an edge when it comes to relationships. So there's a lot of chefs that we know their children's names. We spend time with them. They're our friends. So we want to make sure that we don't lose that aspect as well.
What's a misconception that you had about chefs 5 years ago when you first got into this? Or would you learn over time?
So, one of the first things that we had to learn is how a restaurant works. I can tell you there's plenty of times that, I harvested late. I got out, in the delivery van late, and I showed up right in the middle of service.
How'd that
go? They were patient with me, let me say. So, but we learn more and more how kitchens operate, and there's a lot of nuances. Whether we're delivering poultry that's defrosted versus frozen, that sometimes ties back to how that kitchen's going to use that product, what sort of prep space they have. A lot of the really high-end restaurants in Dallas-Fort Worth, customers would be amazed to know how small their kitchens are. So when we deliver 30 birds, if those birds are frozen, what are they going to do with it? They can't break them down. They can't do what they need to do with them. So learning, how the product needs to be delivered. Little things, do we top radishes or turnips, or do we leave the tops on? There's all these sorts of things, trying to understand how it's meaningful to the chef in the world that they have to deal with. So yeah, a lot of it was trial and error, making mistakes. I've always said you learn more from your mistakes than you do your accomplishments, and we've made plenty of them. So
I've been amazed. I've been in the farming industry for 5-6 years now, and at the rapid growth of technology. But I'm also interested in what have you seen as far as changes within the restaurant market over the last 5 years.
So yeah, I think one thing I would say is that when I first got started, I think there was, whether it was spoken or not, there was concern that this farm to table, farm to fork, movement was going to be faddish, and I don't think it is. I think it's here to stay. It may be branded a little bit differently. It may be, it may not be under the label of farm to table, so to speak, but a chef's ability to find good local product that's high quality, that's delivered to them fast, that's never going to change. That's a huge differentiator for a high-end chef. So I think from that perspective, it's here to stay.
And along that line of thinking, what would you want the public to know that you think that there could be a miscommunication or misconception of what farm to fork really is versus the reality of it? What do you see out there when you're out and about that you go, well, it's really not this, but it's that?
Yeah.
From a consumer standpoint, going to the restaurant.
So I think it would be, I think the most important thing consumers could know is how much effort and passion goes into that meal that they have at a nice restaurant in Dallas or Fort Worth. It's, when you're sitting there that evening, it's, we think of meals, it's low stress, it's a wonderful time. And our chefs create these magical environments. But from the farm to the delivery driver to the chef, I mean, we think about chefs these days, and we have Food Network, and we think all these guys are just millionaires jet setting around the world. I mean, we deal with some very high end chefs in terms of their culinary skills that I don't think, are just running home with wheelbarrows of money. It's margins are tight in the food industry
and
throughout the entire
life.
Supply chain. It is.
It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of hours. Some of the chefs I know, they're up at the same time we're up because there's meetings to be had, there's events to go to, there's making sure that everything got ordered that should have been ordered, putting out a lot of fires, and then the service itself, which if you haven't been in the back of the house, I mean, it is crazy back there some days. As quiet as it can be at the front of the house, it's often pretty
equally as loud and chaotic at the back. So we really enjoy working with the chefs that we work with. The talent level is phenomenal. I mean, you'll hear these chefs say, hey, we just take the product that these farms produce, the real talent's at the farm. But I got to tell you, I turn around and I look and I'm like, hey, this is a really good chicken, or these are really good vegetables. But then to see what they do, it's stuff that I couldn't have even envisioned.
I think this is one industry where you have such a mutual appreciation between provider and then the person that does the thing with it, and it's something I don't think you see anywhere else. I mean, when's the last time you heard about a fashion designer talking about how great a fabric was? You just don't see it. I don't think those kind of relationships were formed anywhere else as closely as they are here, that immediately and very fast get given to the public.
Yeah, well, and it's a relationship that's fully dependent upon one another. I mean, if the chefs don't buy from us, we're out of business. And to the degree that we can provide them really high quality stuff that has a great story, and speaks to their customers, helps their business. So it's truly a win-win scenario.
And it has to happen so fast. I mean, we're talking about the birds, the eggs, the vegetables that are getting processed on the farm or harvested from the farm, hours later taken to the restaurant, taken and made into a piece of art that in 10 minutes from now is going to be gone forever. So it's just so closely knit.
I think that's also a differentiator for us. So working with these local farms, being able to be very nimble and flexible with Profound's group. I know the hydroponic guys have a lot of, matter of fact, the vast majority of what they're delivering was harvested same day. We, on the vegetable side, we try to do the same. There's some stuff that's a little bit more flexible, but you take something on the extreme like squash flowers or something of that nature. We literally load our delivery truck, park it on the road out of the farm, and go harvest those and send them into town. So we want those to be as fresh as possible, as an example.
Let's dig in a little further to Profound Foods. Hopefully we're looking at this thing starting around the first of the year, but being fully active. It sounds like the software is very similar to what you're using for your retail side.
It's much more robust. Our retail side is kind of a standard web store, kind of out of the box, and it works for us. It manages inventories and price, and we can pull harvest lists off of it.
And people are going to want to know what you use.
For the software?
Yeah.
Oh, for the retail side, we use Weebly.
Okay.
And it's fine. We've used we've used Shopify, Weebly. We've made a couple of switches over the years. Weebly's great for just a simple product.
But Profound uses a custom software built for you guys for your specs, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's very customizable. There's a lot of aspects. So we can deal with things that we don't deal with on the retail side, like standing orders. So that was something that we had to, on the leafy greens side, or even the full vegetable spectrum, let's say, there's not a lot of standing orders. Whereas on the poultry and egg side, we push our clients to give us as many standing orders as we can, because it helps us manage our entire supply chain, whether it's our chick orders or our feed deliveries, all of that. If we're working with standing orders, it makes that much easier to deal with.
So as far as bringing more farms into the equation, I know Jeff is out there networking his face off. What does that look like for you, bringing on other people that you know that he may not?
I don't know that there's anyone that Jeff doesn't know. So that may be a trick question. We've spent a lot of time talking about how to onboard other farms, and there's a lot of discussions. We constantly bring ourselves back to this discussion of a mindset of abundance. It's real easy to look at other farms, even for me to look at another poultry farm and say, well, wait a minute, is that farm going to cut into my piece of the pie? And it's really this mindset of scarcity. It assumes that there's a limited market and that there's going to be a loser. And it's really not the case. It's just trying to find the right path to where everyone wins. So we don't want to overburden the let's say the food group. So I mean, if we went out and got 40 cattle guys tomorrow, it may be it's too much too fast. So right now we're trying to look for a large variety, uniqueness. We have a series of priorities that we've talked about, and it's not only it's not only uniqueness, it's consistency. Someone might be able to do something very unique, but they're terribly inconsistent, and that doesn't help the food group. It doesn't help the chefs. So
it doesn't help the farm long run.
It doesn't help the farm. So, but we want this Profound Foods to be more than just this kind of group that vets farms. If we find a farm that has something unique and something that's meaningful, but they can't be consistent, we much rather work with them and say, hey, here's what we've learned. Let us help you find that consistency.
Everything that we talk about being system based for that consistency, for profitability. I think it was so smart that you guys brought on Amanda to help with these trainings and for the culture cultivation that we're looking for here.
Yeah, she's incredible. So talk about a network. I mean, I don't think there's anyone in the Dallas farming world that she doesn't know. And just not only that, if you get to know Amanda, her demeanor, her approach, she's just a genuine person. So, and her role is very much that farmer liaison and making sure that that we are onboarding those farms well and trying to expand the network of farms and do so that's meaningful to our customers.
I'm gonna ask you the same question I asked Jeff. What would be your response if you're out and about doing your thing and you're in a kitchen making a delivery and another farmer came up to you and said, you guys are cutting us all out, there's going to be some people that are going to look at this squirrely. So what's your response to those people that don't believe in the abundance?
Well, I mean, I think that's just the discussion. I mean, if we don't have to cut each other out. There's in almost every circumstance, there's a path where people can win. I guess in life, you're going to run across those people that no matter what have a scarcity point of view, and if they just don't have the ability to look at how we can all work together and win, then that may be a conversation that just is going to be difficult.
And you guys aren't looking to go into you're not looking to go into farmers markets. You guys are not looking to go direct to consumer as of yet.
Right. I mean, we want to take care of chefs first, and we want people to play with us. So, I mean, we literally have not had one discussion about cutting anyone out. That is not our objective. We want to bring people in. So how can we all play together in a way that changes the food market for Dallas? And I mean, we've talked about some big ideas about putting Dallas, even though we have the largest per capita restaurant to consumer, ratio in the nation. We still think that Dallas can evolve even further in terms of having a national or global spotlight for just high-end culinary. And I think we can all play together to get there.
Since you spent time overseas, what did you notice over there that everybody could benefit from here? Like you talked about the frozen aisle was very small. You talked about everything was a lot fresher. What types of lessons? And Jeff is very well traveled himself. There's a massive variety of restaurants and chefs from multiple cultural backgrounds serving multiple cultural cuisines. What's the next step as far as whether it's fusion or introducing a new way to cook Texas beef from one of those cuisines?
One of the things that one of the biggest differences I noticed, especially in Europe, but I mean, I traveled all over the world. The the way the consumer approaches dining is very different in America than the rest of the world. And the best example I can give you is when you go out to eat in northern Italy, first of all, if you arrive at 8, the restaurant's not open, so it's a later meal. It's a 4-hour event. No one's upset because the plate didn't hit the table fast enough. It's a time that you spend with friends. That it's just such a cultural difference, and I don't know how we change that culture in America. There's some restaurants that don't want to change that culture. They're based on table turns. So if they can turn that table 3 times a night, that's great. Eat and leave. But most of our restaurants don't view food that way and don't view the customers that way. They're wanting to provide an experience. And I think my perception, not having been a chef, is that experience would be more enjoyable for them to provide if their customers just became part of the process. They weren't rushed. They knew they were going to spend the evening enjoying a meal, and I think some of them have gotten there, especially some of these farm dinners. When it's like a wine pairing, a 7-course wine pairing, or something crazy like that, they know they're going to be there for a while. But I don't know. That's something that I walked away with really loving about Europe and struggling with when I came back. I mean, there'd be times where, you wouldn't be finished with your appetizer and they're putting your entree in front of you and you just feel rushed. So, and they think that that's what we want.
You also mentioned earlier about using the whole animal. Yep. And we're starting to see a lot of that where we're at.
Yeah. So it's, so we try not to waste anything. I mean, if it's legally sellable on a chicken, we sell it. And the chefs, they use all of these things. And I mean, some of these chefs are really talented with charcuterie and other ways of using parts that may not be as popular. I find it interesting. There's even in the beef world, there were a lot of parts that we covet today that 75 years ago was just trash. I mean, brisket, flank, and all these things that other cultures have made us realize how awesome they can be. So we try to sell everything we can and find a market for it and waste. I mean, at the end of the day, sustainability defines what we do. So, I mean, if we turn around and waste half the animal, it doesn't honor the animal and it doesn't honor, the world that we're trying to improve.
Let's say 7 years ago, you're in telecommunications. You've been farming for 5. What advice do you have for that person out there that's sitting at a desk or making the commute, that's not farming, but that wants to farm so bad? What advice would you give them for their first step?
So I'll answer it this way. Here's a mistake that we made when we started. We wanted to be a multi-practice, diverse farm. And we are today to some degree, but the facets of things that we did was stretched us too far. So we had too many facilities, too many varieties, too many different endeavors. We were doing bees and vegetables and eggs and just everything. And we've been under a process over the last couple of years of trying to identify what we're really good at and getting those things to run really well. So it's not that we don't want to do other things, but we're going to focus on a few things, get them done really well, and that gives us the financial freedom and the time to do the next thing really well. So the advice I would give someone that was getting started, find something you're really good at, even if it's one product. If you're just good at growing artichokes, be awesome at growing artichokes, and then go find some customers that'll buy those artichokes. Or call us at Profound and we'll market them for you. But in all seriousness, I think the chefs appreciate that. If they know, and we hear them say this all the time, hey, he's our artichoke guy. She's our asparagus girl. I mean, they're really good at that. And then that provides you the financial freedom and the time to do number 2 and number 3.
Beyond farming and the labor of farming and harvesting, transplanting, seeding, what else do they need to focus on from a business perspective?
Yeah, so this is where I think my corporate background helped. I mean, there's a lot of farms out there that are multi-generation farms that, I mean, it's the cliche story of people just struggling to make ends meet, to hold on to the family farm. And I don't know that they understand the business side of it. So I think understanding your cost, your profitability, not being ashamed to ask for a fair price. There's nothing wrong with someone making, a 30 or 35% margin on a really good product. They shouldn't be ashamed of that. And we're competing against commodity players. So, if we ask, $3.50 for a pound of chicken and someone says, yeah, but I can get it for 75 cents on sale at Walmart, it's not the same product and we're not competing in that space. So it's okay to ask for a fair margin.
They wouldn't know how to cook those heritage birds anyway.
Yeah. So, I don't really know anyone that's just getting rich. No one's making 100%, 150% margin on any of these products. So,
that being said, any regret of getting out of corporate and doing what you're doing now?
No regrets. There's corporate has this perceived security, and I had a good career. I was paid well. I got to see a lot of the world. I enjoyed that. But I was also
there's one of those mystical things called benefits, probably.
There were some benefits there, yeah. But it was all, most of it took place in a cubicle, and this has not been without struggle for sure. But I think after 5 years of doing it, we're getting to the point where I think we have kind of figured it out as a business, how to make sure that we make money, how to make sure our employees are taken care of and prioritized, and even to the point where we can start to expand on our employee base, so that we can provide more product and better product.
You have any book recommendations?
Yeah, I do. So The Market Gardener by Jean-Martin Fortier, the Canadian vegetable grower, is awesome. If you're ever going to get into sheep, there's a book called More Grass, More Sheep, More Money. It's about a couple of other Canadians actually that were into beef. They were cattle ranchers, and they started making so much money on sheep they shut down their cattle operation. There's one I think it's called The Lean Farmer. That this was a guy that worked for in the automotive industry with Toyota. That they studied how manufacturing works, and that in such detail it would blow your mind. Like they studied, hey, if we move this cart 3 inches closer to a line worker, so he only has to reach this far for a wrench, we'll gain another 15 seconds at the end of the day, and that 15 seconds over the next 10 years has this value. So they just optimized everything to the nth degree. Well, this guy took that same philosophy and applied it to a farm.
Well, if you're talking about driving around 100 acres here, going back to the shop 2 times a day, adds a lot of time.
Joel Salatin famously, when he does his his speeches and stuff, he gets on to his employees that don't carry a backpack with them. And so if you're going to go out to move the chickens, there's certain things you're going to need. There may be a water valve that breaks or a gasket or whatever. You should have all those things in your backpack so you don't have to walk all the way back to the barn. So yeah, we've burned plenty of time with inefficiencies over the years.
Have you had any mentors over the years?
I have. I probably should have gotten more farming mentors. I've had business mentors that have given us insight just on not only the financials, but more the business philosophies. How to manage inventories, customer bases. Farms, especially beginning farms, they put themselves in a precarious position where very often they'll have 1 or 2 customers that represent 90% of their customer base. So you get one canceled order and you're in a pickle. So what's a good ratio for for how much of your product goes to a single customer, and making sure that you're not exposing yourself from those from that perspective. So yeah, it's not necessarily farming, but it's still basic manufacturing concepts.
Yeah, which we are manufacturing goods.
We are.
Not down the line, just out in the field.
And I think people need to get that a farm is a manufacturing business, and it's got all the same struggles that any other manufacturing, supply chain, inventory issues, accounts receivable. Those are things that we talk about all the time. We never have enough freezer space for extra chicken inventory. So
yeah. Well, listen, I really appreciate the time. It's fun for us to get on a different type of farm. I don't believe we've been on farms with chickens for sure, but not anywhere near this scale. And we talked about scale, that this is still a relatively small scale, but for a lot of other people out there, this would be a much larger scale. But it's neat to see all the different things going on that we usually don't get to see. But we're looking forward to catching up with Profound Foods over the next few months. I'm sure we'll have an update, and maybe we can get everybody in the same room for the next one. But thank you so much for having us out, and everybody take a look at the video. Anyway, this is Nick from Celina, Texas at Cartamere Farms with Nelson Carter. This podcast was brought to you by Bootstrap Farmer, music by Random Rab, and we'll see you guys next week.